Hi, and welcome to the Algebra 1, Chapter 5, Quiz number 2, Review Answer Key. So, as we go through the answer key in this video, I'm going to give you some tips, tricks, and just things to keep in mind for your upcoming quiz. Please make sure that you've actually submitted your attempt at the problems on the quiz first before you go through and change this. So if we look at number 1 and 2, they want us to state whether X and Y have a positive correlation, a negative correlation, or no correlation. Then, if they have a positive or negative correlation, draw a line of best fit and write the equation of that line. So in number 1, to give you two examples, either one would be an acceptable answer, the pink line or the green line. But you'll notice that I really didn't have to do any calculations or math to write my equations, because I was purposeful when I drew my line of best fit, and I made sure of a couple things. For example, both lines of best fit, I made sure the y-intercept was at a -2 here. That way, I didn't need to calculate b. I knew both equations would end in a -2 for the y-intercept. Then, once I drew the lines, I could look at the graph and follow the slope. For example, the pink line, it was down 2, right 2. Down 2, right 2 to the next point. So that would be a -2/2, which simplifies to a -1. So if you drew something like the pink line, your equation would be y equals -x, or -1x, minus 2. If we drew the green line, it still passes through the y-intercept, or the y-axis, at -2, so b is a -2, and then my slope from one point to the next, in this case it was down 4, right 6 to this point here. Down 4, right 6 simplifies to a -2/3. Down 2/3. So my slope would be a -2/3, y-intercept -2, so the equation is y equals -2/3 x minus 2. In number 2, again, I was purposeful in drawing in my line of best fit, meaning I looked at what made sense, and I had a point right here at 0, -4 that I wanted to use on my line. That way I know my y-intercept was -4. Then when I drew in my line of best fit, from the y-intercept to the next whole number point that it crosses, it's up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. So my slope is 1, so slope of 1x minus 4 for the y-intercept. Then, in number 1, my lines have a negative slope, meaning x and y have a negative correlation. In 2, my slope is positive, so x and y have a positive correlation. Now if we look at number 3, graph the points from the table, draw your line of best fit, then write the equation of that line. So they gave us info about age and pupil diameter. If you're ever given a 2-column table like this, your left-hand column is your x values, the right-hand column are your y values. So x on the bottom, I went by tens for the age. Y on the side, I went by halves. And then I had to plot each of these points. So over 20, up 4.7. Over 30, up 4.3. Over 40, up 3.9, and so on. So that gave me all the pink points on this graph. Then drew in my line of best fit, and I chose 2 points that this line of best fit goes through that are whole number points. So these 5 points, or these 4 points in blue are all on my blue line, but I want to use whole numbers, not decimals. So I'm using the point 60, 3 and the point 80, 2. So once you drew in your line and you selected 2 points off the line of best fit, now we need to use those 2 points to come up with our slope. So change in y over change in x. So 3 minus 2 on top, 60 minus 80 on bottom. Gives me a slope of a negative 1/20. Now that we have our slope, we want to set up y equals mx plus b slope-intercept form, put in our slope for m, and then select one of these 2 points, either the 60, 3 or the 80, 2, to go in for x and y to solve for b. So I use the 80, 2. So 2 went in for y, 80 for x. 80 divided by 20 is 4, multiplied by the negative 1 is a negative 4. So 2 equals negative 4 plus b. Add 4 to each side, and b would equal 6. So my equation would be y equals a negative 1/20 x plus 6. If yours came out with a slope of a negative 1 over 15 or negative 1 over 25 and your y-intercept was slightly different, that's perfectly okay, because a line of best fit can be drawn slightly different. Then we get into numbers 4 and 5. Now, in any of the directions where they talk about different forms, to help you out, what I recommend doing is writing the forms by those words in the directions. So our directions say write the equation in the following, or write the equation of the following lines in point slope form, and then rewrite in slope intercept form. So first point slope form is y minus y sub 1 equals m times the quantity x minus x sub 1. And then slope intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So in number 4, first thing I want to do is write it in point slope form. So they gave me a slope of negative 6 and a point at negative 5, 2. So the 2 will go in for y1, negative 5 goes in for x1, and then the negative 6 goes in for m. So our point slope form would be y minus 2, because the original equation subtraction, equals negative 6 times the quantity x plus 5, because it would be originally x minus the negative 5, which turns that to addition. Now to go from point slope form to slope intercept form, we want to use the distributive property. So in this case, we'll take a negative 6 and distribute it by multiplying to each part inside the parentheses. So the left-hand side of our equation is still y minus 2. The right-hand side is now negative 6x minus 30. Then, last step is to get y alone for slope-intercept form. So we're going to undo the subtracting of 2 by adding 2 to each side, and y equals a negative 6x minus 28. In number 5, it's the same process. So first we need to write point slope form. So we end up with y plus 4 equals 3/8 times the quantity x plus 8. Both turn to addition because our point is a negative 8, negative 4. Then we need to distribute the 3/8 to each part of the inside on the right. So 3/8 times x is 3/8 x. 3/8 times 8 is just plus 3. So we have y plus 4 equals 3/8 x plus 3. To get y alone, we'd subtract 4 from each side, and y would equal 3/8 x minus 1. Then for numbers 6 and 7, write the equations in point slope form. So in this case, they give us 2 points. So the first thing we have to do is find our slope. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So for number 6, On top, we'd have 12 minus negative 2, which is 12 plus 2, and on bottom, 5 minus 6. So we end up with 14 over negative 1, meaning my slope is a negative 14. Once you have your slope, you can select either of the original points. So I could use the 5, 12 or the 6, negative 2 to write my point slope equation. So if we use the 5 and the 12, you would end up with this top equation. Y minus 12 equals negative 14 times x minus 5. If we use the 6, negative 2, we end up with the bottom equation. Y plus 2, because it's y minus a negative 2, equals the negative 14 times the quantity x minus 6. So select either point and your slope to put into point slope form. So in 7, we need to find our slope first. So on top, 2 minus a negative 1, 2 plus 1. On bottom, negative 9 minus a negative 4, negative 9 plus 4. Gives us a slope of negative 3/5. So now we're going to plug a single point in with our slope to write our equation. So if we're using negative 4, negative 1, our equation is y plus 1 equals a negative 3/5 times x plus 4. Or if we're using the negative 9, 2, we'd end up with y minus 2 equals the negative 3/5, and in parentheses, x plus 9. You only need the top or the bottom one. Either one is correct. And then we get into our last 4 problems. And on these, they want us to write the equations in standard form. So ax plus by equals c. And what you want to remember is a, b, and c all need to be whole numbers, meaning no fractions or decimals. And we want to get x and y on the same side, our constant number on its own on the right. So in number 8, we have y equals negative 2x plus 3/2 x. Because we have a fraction, we want to get rid of that first. And what's on bottom is a 2. So I'm going to multiply every term in the equation by 2. So on the left, 2 times y is 2y. On the right, negative 2 times 2 is a negative 4. 3/2 x times 2. The 2 cancels the bottom, and we just have plus 3x. So then we want to get x and y to the same side. So we're going to subtract 3x over on both sides. So we'd end up with negative 3x plus 2y equals negative 4. Now, as some of you noticed as you checked answers in the back of the book, they always start with a positive coefficient in front of x. Nowhere does it say you have to do that, but in mathematics, it's good practice to try to do that. So in order to do that, and honestly, I don't care, I'll take this top answer, negative 3x plus 2y equals negative 4. But if you wanted to start with a positive coefficient, you just change the sign of each term. So this would become a 3x minus 2y equals positive 4. And these two are equivalent equations, so I'd take either one. Now with number 9, they gave us a slope, they gave us a point. So the first thing we want to do is set it up in y equals mx plus b, putting in the m, the x, and the y, and solving for b. So we end up with negative 2 equals 5 times 1 plus b. So negative 2 equals 5 plus b. Subtract the 5, and negative 7 equals b. So now we have our slope and our y-intercept, so we can write the equation in y equals mx plus b. Y equals 5x minus 7. Now I want to get x and y to the same side, so I need to get rid of the positive 5x by subtracting it. So I have negative 5x plus y equals negative 7. Or if I wanted to start with a positive, I'd change the sign of each piece. So it'd be 5x minus y equals 7. Then in 10 and 11, number 10, m equals negative 2/5, and then the point negative 4, 9. So again, we need to set it up to solve for b. So y equals mx plus b, plugging in the info we know, m, x, and y. So 9 equals negative 2/5 times negative 4 plus b. Negative 2/5 times a negative 4 is a positive 8/5. So 9 minus 8/5 will equal b, which is 7 2/5. Or, which I'd write this as, the improper fraction of 37 over 5. So 7 2/5 is the same thing as 37 over 5. 5 times 7 is 35 plus 2 on top. So our equation would then be y equals negative 2/5 x plus 7 2/5, or negative 2/5 x plus 37 over 5. So when we have this equation, y equals negative 2/5 x plus 37 over 5, both denominators are 5. So that tells me to multiply every part of my equation by 5 to get rid of the denominators. So we end up with 5y equals negative 2x plus 37. Then we need to get x and y to the same side. So we'll add 2x to undo the negative 2x. Add 2x to the other side, and we have 2x plus 5y equals 37. Then our last problem, we're given 2 points. So the first thing we need to do when we're given these 2 points is to find the slope. So change in y over change in x. 2 minus negative 2 on top is 2 plus 2. Negative 3 minus 9 on bottoms, and negative 12. So we have 4 over negative 12, which simplifies to a negative 1/3. So now I have my slope. So now I take my slope, and one of my points, so I'm going to use the negative 3, 2, and write it in y equals mx plus b to find b. So 2 equals negative 1/3 times negative 3 plus b. Negative 3 times a negative 1/3 is a positive 1. So 2 equals 1 plus b. Subtract 1 from each side, and b equals 1. So now I have my b and my m, so I can write in slope-intercept form. Y equals negative 1/3 x plus 1. My fraction has a 3 on the bottom, so I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So I end up with 3y equals negative 1x, or negative x, plus 3. So we want to add x to each side, and we end up with x plus 3y equals 3.